Thank you for being here. This I'm going to just generically name effectively, or if I can, effective communication skills. That's the first part of communication skills, is getting my point across. Effective communication skills, part 1. There may be a part 2. It depends on how much we get through today. I have some notes over here, so if you see me looking over there, that's what I'm looking at. But this isn't the normal kind of communication skills that you'd read online or see elsewhere, because it's based on specific training that I got in 2009, and it's part of my NLP training. If you don't know what NLP is, it's neuro-linguistic programming, and some people are skeptical about what's this NLP stuff, and that's not really effective, and some people, it's changed their lives. It's changed my life. NLP has changed my life because it helps me perceive the world in a different way. And in NLP, there's something called presuppositions. And just real quick, that's presupposing something about something, meaning I am making assumptions about something. Now, a presupposition in communication will be presupposing that someone or someone has a certain behavior for a certain reason, or presupposing different philosophies. And it'll make sense in a second. But what I'm saying is that when we communicate, there are different ways to do so. You know, you hear like, you got to build rapport. Like, if they like golf, let's talk golf. If they like scuba diving, I once went on the ocean, and that helps. And that it certainly builds rapport. And there's a lot of natural ways that people can do this. And then there's a lot of ways that people don't know how to build better rapport. So a lot of it is about building rapport, but the specific things that you do that help that along the way, that amplify it. But what I'm going to talk about today, the presuppositions of NLP, the presuppositions of communication, have to do with making assumptions about the world and people that may or may not be true. And this is where it's unique in how we talk to people. In the sense that if I assume that you don't understand me, then I become a better communicator. Like a recent episode, I talked about the meaning of communication is the response that you get from someone else. So if I explain something and you go, I don't understand, it's more resourceful for me to go, oh, then I must not have communicated it clearly, instead of me going, oh, you're an idiot. Because how does that get us anywhere in communication? So I instead take it back, and I go, okay, I'll own the fact that you didn't understand me. Now, some people have trouble with that. They say, like, my girlfriend's a perfect example. She said last night, and I'll probably reference this a couple times because it was perfect timing. Last night we had this conversation that went nowhere, and I was speaking one language and she was speaking another language, and we're both fairly intelligent people, but we could not connect, and I could not express what I was trying to express, and she couldn't understand, and she kept explaining one thing and I was asking a different thing. So I was like, where did this go wrong? I don't even know where this went wrong, and I study this stuff. So I'm like, next time we have this kind of conversation, I'm going to turn the recorder on and listen, and whatever I say, I'm going to break that down, and what you say back, I'm going to break that down. So the idea is to have the responsibility of communication in your brain, in your mind, so that when you communicate with someone, you know that it's your responsibility to get the message across, not their responsibility to understand it. Now, of course, they have a responsibility of understanding, of listening. They may not be good active participants in listening, but it's better when you have that. But to take it back, it actually really builds compassion inside yourself. Like, oh, you didn't understand me, so let me rephrase it, or let me ask you, what part didn't you understand? So that's basic communication skills. But the philosophy of what I'm teaching today is owning some assumptions about the world and about people, whether they're true or not, to make you a more effective communicator. So let me begin. I wrote some bullet items here, and I'll just go through them one by one. And I'm hoping to keep this under an hour, and I will ask if there's any questions every 2 or 3 items, just in case. So just write those down. I used to say interrupt me anytime, but I think that interrupts my flow of thought. So next time, just I'll have you write them down, then I'll pause, and we'll see if there's any questions or comments. So far, are there any questions or comments? No, and I can't see you.
I'm trying.
Okay, good. So I can't see you, Mandy, so just say no. Or yes.
Right. Yeah. No,
okay.
I'm fine.
Okay, thanks.
So far. Thank you.
Perfect. So the first presupposition, and what we can call those assumptions, presuppositions, is you cannot not communicate. That's an odd one. You cannot not communicate. So this is the great example of that is, well, let me just rephrase that a little bit so I get this point across, is that you're always communicating something to someone, even when your mouth is shut, even when your eyes are looking straight forward and you're making no expression, you're always communicating something. And that's good to know, because people are always picking things up subconsciously. And you may already know this, but people are always picking things up subconsciously. So even walking down the street, you might make an assumption about someone like, that's a cool dude with a skip in his step, or that guy's lazy, or that girl's lazy, or whatever. You have these assumptions. They're always communicating something to you because we're interpreting what's going on with them. So what that means is that there are also things going on when I'm, like right now, when I'm talking. There's ways that and I have to be weirdly conscious of what I'm doing to explain this. There are ways that my eyes are moving, my brows are moving up, I smile sometimes, my inflection goes up, my inflection goes down. There's all kinds of ways. My hands are moving like crazy, I'm very animated, and my body is moving. There's ways that I'm breathing. All these little things that we don't really think about consciously, but we pick up subconsciously. And what that does, there are already thoughts forming in our mind that are taking place before we even get a chance to speak back or return a thought. So with that in mind, like for example, Dr. Paul Ekman studies micro expressions in people. Don't know if you heard about him. I did some research on him, some reading, some study. And micro expressions are those tiny little expressions that flash by, that your subconscious mind picks up, but you aren't aware of consciously. And that's important to know, because sometimes you'll get a feeling about someone and you'll go, I don't trust that guy. And it could have been one little micro expression that went by really fast. And you're like, I don't know why I don't trust that guy, but I don't trust that guy. And you know, there's intuition in other ways too, but that can happen, is that you can pick up some small micro expression. And a good example of that is when I went to a seminar with a personal growth guy, and I was working for this personal growth guy. I won't mention his name. Off the air I will. And he was on stage, and he had what he called flaggers in the audience, and the flaggers hold the flag and carry a microphone around. So when you have 500 people in the audience, the speaker knows where the microphone is. Then he can go, okay, the person with the red flag, okay, the flagger goes over to the guy and puts the microphone in his face, and then they can talk. So one guy was raising his hand, and one of the flaggers was going over to that guy, and or didn't see the guy or something. And I was watching the speaker on the stage, and he goes, okay, just go over to that guy and let's get a microphone in his hand. But the flagger didn't know where he was. So the speaker's like, he's over there. And I was watching, and the speaker's just smiling. And then for an instant, I saw him go like this, and see if he can catch it. It was really quick. It looked like he wanted to punch the guy in the face, the flagger, because he wasn't catching it. But I saw it. And as soon as he did that, he went like this. He went, and then he smiled again, like nothing was wrong. And I was like, I just caught you. You're pissed. And he just seen, you know, this is my assumption, but I caught it, and it changed my view of him. But I was very conscious of that. If you're not conscious of that, if you're not not conscious, if you're not conscious of that, then you might develop an attitude about someone and not even realize why you feel that way. So it's just good to be aware that these micro expressions that happen, they're pretty truthful. When you read Dr. Paul Ekman's work, they're telling you what's going on inside the person, because we do. I mean, you can probably all relate to this. I know I can. We do our best not to show our raw emotions to a lot of people. Yeah, we do our best not to show our anger. Okay, I won't be angry about that. I'm just gonna keep my cool. Somebody cut in front of me in line, and I might say something, but if they don't leave, I might play it cool. So that happens all the time. So I just think that's a good example of micro expressions and how they are always happening, but it's hard to catch. And Dr. Ekman also has like slow motion videos, I think, on his YouTube channel that you can see, like in court cases where people will change their expression really quick and then go back, like right before they're about to answer a question. Like, were you angry that night? No, I wasn't angry. You could start to see these little micro expressions. Like, oh, okay, good. So that's one thing. Now, any questions about that before we move on? Great. The second one is, just talked about this. This is kind of how I opened it. The meaning of communication is the response that you get. That means that you take responsibility for how you communicate. Now, some people disagree with that. They think my communication is 50%, your communication is 50%, and we have to do our best to communicate to each other. But what happens when you take full responsibility for the communication that you're putting off or putting out there is that you become more effective at communicating. And you also have the ability to express more clearly. And even if they don't understand, like I don't understand, you're taking ownership of almost the conversation itself. It's hard to explain, but the idea of owning that gives you more power. Because if you let them be the interpreter of your message, hoping that they interpret it correctly, without you even knowing what they're interpreting sometimes, then you're giving away some power. Again, this is just if you make this assumption about someone else, if you make this your philosophy, then your communication style changes, and then you become more effective. So in the sense, do I have an example of this? I don't know. A good example is last night. My girlfriend and I were talking about, we were plugged in her music keyboard or piano keyboard into the mixer and the audio, and we were talking about audio stuff, and I just had a question about how the cable is plugged in, and she started explaining to me about left and right stereo, and I was like, I just have a question about the cable, how that's plugged in. But the way I was asking, she didn't understand it, so she answered a different question, and we just went back and forth, and finally I just said, no, all I care about is the hardware. And she goes, oh, now I understand. I was like, oh. So I felt myself getting frustrated. She was clearly getting frustrated, but it was because I didn't take responsibility that she misunderstood. I just assumed that she's not listening. And when we assume that excuse me, when we assume that someone's not listening, we start looking maybe down on them. We start being condescending. Oh, someone's not listening to me. It's their fault. Okay, that changes when you think someone didn't understand me. Let me rephrase it. So that's just a subtle thing, but it's huge. Because if you go, oh, if someone didn't understand me, then I will try to convey it a different way. And you ask questions. Does that make sense? I mean, that's a question I would ask. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? As I go along, or what part did you get stuck at? And that's like it's almost like, and I hate to say this, it's almost like you're training a 5-year-old. If you were a 5-year-old, how would I talk to you? You know, not like, hello, how are you doing? But in the words that I would use, because some people are stuck on generalizations. A generalization is like, every door has a doorknob. I'm generalizing that every door has a doorknob. So when I approach that door, I know to look for a doorknob or a latch or a handle of some sort. So if somebody has this generalization in their mind and somebody says to me, go open that door, I'm going to say, okay, I'll walk over there, look for the doorknob, and I don't see a doorknob and be like, I don't know how to open the door. I said open the door, just open it. Like, I'm not sure how to open it. And so they're getting frustrated with me because they don't realize that I've generalized all doors to have doorknobs. So there's a lot of generalizations that take place in our mind that are important to know. So because of that, sometimes you'll convey a message or ask somebody a question, and they'll have another thought in their mind that all doors have doorknobs. They have these assumptions in the world. So we need to get through those assumptions sometimes, which is why it's important for us to find out where they're getting stuck. How come you can't open the door? I can't find the doorknob. Oh, now it makes sense. Let me convey to you that door opens by itself, or there's a button on the right, or whatever. So far, so good? Good. All right, next one is, I love this one. This is called The Map is Not the Territory. And all that means is that, let me give you the most basic example. When you put a paper map down on a table, you remember the old paper maps before Google Maps? Even Google Maps will work too, but an old paper map on the table, and you see all the lines and roads and rivers and mountains sometimes, depending on the terrain of the map. That's representative of what's really out there. This map is not really the territory that's on Earth or in the sky or whatever. This map doesn't represent reality. I mean, it is reality, but it doesn't represent actuality. That's how I want to put it. This is the reality of how long the roads are, how they twist and how they turn. But the actual this is a representation of what's actually out there. Now, that's the basic example. The example in communication is that the words I say aren't reality. They represent an actuality or a representation inside of me. So if I were to describe a mountain to you, and I said, I just saw this big mountain, my picture of a mountain might have snow on it, rocks, a lake at the bottom. Your image of a mountain might have all trees, and maybe it's massive, maybe it's small. But my map that I'm putting out into the world, my communication map, doesn't match anyone else's. And that's important to know, because one word to me might mean something completely different as one word to you. A good example of that is run. The word run, if you look it up in the dictionary, I don't know, has like 37 definitions. 37 different definitions. Can you run this program? That is like one definition. Can you run to the store? Can you run this program that helps you run to the store while running your car? And all these different words. So that's a basic one, but let's just put it in perspective like love. Love is a huge filled word. Lots of different meanings for love. My own personal meaning, you probably heard me say it, is love is supporting someone else's happiness. But someone else is, love is when someone buys me a gift. Someone else might think love is XYZ. What's important about that is that you realize that everyone has a different definition of love, and that what you're looking for in a relationship or from family, they may not be able to give, but not because they don't love. They just love in a different way. They define love in a different way. Love was given to them in a different way. And love is one example. There's billions of words out there, I think, millions of words out there. And how many different definitions that we all give to these words, because we all have our own experiences. We all have our own history in life. We were all raised our own unique ways. So when someone isn't fulfilling our need, or in this case, loving us in a way, we can look at that and go, okay, they're not loving in a way that is suitable for me or acceptable to me or enough for me. You know, some people I know have been in abusive relationships and they think that's not love, but that might be how love was shown to them. It doesn't work for me. Being abused doesn't work for me, so that's not love, so I need to get out of that. And that's important to know. That's a good assumption to make, that what I'm conveying isn't necessarily how they're interpreting it the way I want them to interpret it. Which brings you back to I have to own my communication. So that's called the map is not the territory. So far so good? All right. Great. Great, great. Now this is a fun one. The person with the most flexibility in a system controls the system. I know that sounds scientific. I'll break it down. The person with the most flexibility in a system controls the system. Now, this is especially prevalent in coaching. For example, I once had a client that said that she could bring a dead relative back from the dead. I mean, some people might think that's absolutely nuts. Some people might say, absolutely, I agree with you. My belief system didn't support that, but I'm not the type of person to go, that's ridiculous. But I become flexible in my communication enough to go, wow, you think that you can bring him back from the dead? And she goes, yes. I was like, great, let's work with that. Instead of going, you're nuts, I'm going to change your thought process, which builds in resistance, which builds in mistrust. Let me change your thought process. What I did was become flexible. That I decided to adopt temporarily this reality. Let's just say that it's real. Let's work with that. That changes my state. It changes my energy. It changes her. She feels understood. Great. Let's work together. So this is very handy to just assume what they're saying is true for a moment. That's one aspect of being flexible. Another aspect, and this is how this is what I talk about in my ebook, How to Deal with Irrational People, is when someone's going crazy. Like, I can't stand this, I can't stand this, and they're pulling their hair out, and they're in the middle of crazy. Sometimes it's hard to go, hey, calm down. And sometimes that works. Calm down, calm down. No, I can't calm down, I can't calm down. Sometimes it's better, or not better, but sometimes it's helpful to act just as crazy, if not more crazy than them in that moment. You're right, I can't believe it, I can't believe this. Oh, and you start ripping things up, and then they look at you going, this guy's crazier than me. And then they calm down. That's because I'm being flexible. It's something that I wouldn't normally do. So I take myself out of my comfort zone a little bit and just act a little nuts to control the system. Because right now the system's out of control. They're crazy. They're out of control. So what do? I want to control that system. I might have to act a little crazier or as crazy as them. It's sort of like the advice I heard for once on how to stop a baby from crying. Cry along with the baby. Doesn't always work because sometimes they're still hungry. But I was like, that's interesting advice. Does that work? But sometimes you'll see the baby stop and listen. Like, there's another baby crying. Which I thought was interesting. I don't know if that always works. I haven't tested that too much. But the idea of being flexible in the sense of replicating someone else's behavior or going along with things or beliefs that someone else has that you may not have, just to keep that rapport, just to keep the trust, just to keep the understanding. It can be very handy, very helpful to do. All right. So far, so good. Just, yes, I see a hand raised. Go ahead, Linda.
Would you say it's one of our deepest needs as human beings to be heard? And that's why it's so good to do what you just said, like take on their belief temporarily. Like it feels so good if you know someone's actually hearing you.
That's a great question. And not only to be heard, but to feel important, to feel noticed. I mean, because sometimes we grow up and we're not noticed by our parents, and we need some noticing. We feel neglected. So when someone comes along and says, wow, I totally understand where you're coming from. Oh my God, that could be, wow, what if that's true? You're right. Or, you have these thoughts in your head. What if that's true? Okay, let's talk about that. You're not automatically negating them, invalidating them, because invalidation's huge. And a good example of that is when I worked in IT, and I went to this bank and I was installing a computer. Such a different world than I'm doing now, but I was installing this computer, and this woman was talking to me. She worked at the bank, and she was telling me about these dreams that she had. You probably heard me say this in an episode once. And the dreams that she had were her hiding in a closet, watching people, and then coming out of the closet and killing them. I was like, wow, that's a dream. And instead of just judging her, I decided to be curious. I was like, wow, what do you think? Why do you think you were dreaming that? And she's like, you know, because this is what happens, that people, when she tells that story, people might go, what? That's crazy. Go see therapy. Immediately invalidating anything that's going on inside of her, telling her she's crazy for having the thoughts she's having. For anyone to share something like that is, you know, a step into vulnerability, because that could bring some feedback, some lashback. But she told me this, and instead of going, that's nuts, you're crazy, I said, wow, that's quite a dream. Tell me more. And come to find out, she was studying law, criminal law. And she would get into the heads of these criminals to find out why they do what they do, what they're doing, trying to figure out, okay, she had these crime scenes in her head, and she would have dreams about it at night. She said, you know, she said to me after I responded, she said to me, you're the first person who didn't call me crazy. I mean, how good must that have felt? And so that really reinforced to me that it's nice to meet people where they are. Somebody says, I was abducted by UFOs. It's not in my belief system, but I'll go, wow, when did this happen? What are you talking about? I want to know more. Instead of going, that's crazy, that doesn't exist, you know, you're ridiculous. And they open up. And, you know, sometimes when you do that, when there is some sort of belief that someone else has that really isn't resourceful for them, really isn't helpful, like every morning I wake up and I think someone's watching me through the window. And when I take a shower, I think it's like that song, somebody's watching me. and when they take this belief around with them, they're in paranoia all the time. So instead of going, nobody's watching you, you're crazy, no one's watching you. Look out the window, there's no one out there. Instead of doing that, you go along with it. I mean, sometimes. And you say, okay, let's set up a camera. Let's point it at the window. You know, let's do that. What can we do to find out how this, or where this person is? You start believing them so that, and this is where it leads, so that they can come to a self-empowered decision that maybe they're wrong. Maybe what I believe isn't true. Because as soon as you negate someone's belief system, it almost reinforces in them that they're right. I'm going to negate your belief system. That reinforces that I'm right. I mean, that's like the political conversations on Facebook that I've seen in the past 3 months. I'm going to, you know, Trump this, Trump that, Hillary this, Hillary that. And every time you said something against the other candidate, the people who supported that candidate came back even further, more stronger, supporting their side. So it was like pointless conversations sometimes. And I got into one of them and I was like, I'm out of here. I'll never do this again.
I read it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you read that one? It's enough for me. I see you, Mandy. Good to see your video.
Good to see you guys.
Good. All right. Does that answer your question, Leila?
Yeah.
Great.
That's good.
Great. If you could put yourself on mute, I think I hear myself through your microphone. Thanks. All right. Where are we? We're at 11:30. Oh, my God. We're doing such good on time. So good. All right. So here we go. This is a good belief to have. Again, these are assumptions that are good to have. It doesn't mean they're true. Just because I say communication is 100% your responsibility doesn't mean it's true. It's just that if you adopt that as a philosophy, it helps you communicate better. It helps you keep your power. It helps you get your point across. So when you have this, it also helps them as well feel connected and not mistrust you. So this next one is everyone works perfectly. No one is wrong or broken. And a good example of that is my mom lived with an abusive person for 44 years. And 44 years, I mean, that's like saying she, you know, somebody might look at that and go, she's crazy, she's wrong, she's broken. Why would she live with an abusive person? Because she hated his guts. Hope the person never watches this. He won't. But she hated his guts. And so you can't look at her. If you look at her as broken, that's hard to accept in yourself. I'm broken. But if you look at her behavior as like a word I like to use is unresourceful. her behavior was unresourceful in that context. So her behavior was accepting this abuse. But she wasn't broken, because we're all a product of our environment growing up. She figured out, and we talked about this earlier, that maybe this is how love is. This is how you get security in your life. That if you lose this, even if they're abusing you, you'll lose security. So she'd have all these belief systems. But that didn't make her wrong or broken. And because I was able to see her as just having a belief system that didn't serve her well, and that she wasn't broken, meant that there was always hope. Because we can look at people and go, there's no hope for them. Crack addict, there's no hope for them. I mean, that's an assumption that somebody might make. I'm not saying that. There's no hope for that crack addict. They'll never get off the drug. It's addictive and they're going to die. It's like, wow, that calls someone broken. But if you say, you know what, they're in a bad space, or they're doing behavior that doesn't serve them, so that gives them the opportunity, that shows that you see more in them than they may at that time. So this helps you connect with people in a different way. I don't see you as broken. I don't see anyone as broken. I see them as maybe having behavior that doesn't serve them, so how can we change that behavior if they want to? Some people have behavior that doesn't serve them and they want to keep it. My mom had behavior that didn't serve her, in my opinion, for 44 years, and he finally left. And then she realized only after a couple months that when he was finally gone out of her life for a couple months, she realized, oh, I was doing that the whole time. She was in trance the whole time. She was in that state that she didn't know she was doing behavior that didn't serve her. She just thought that leaving him would be a bad idea. So she never explored it. But she's not wrong. She just had behavior that didn't serve her. That makes sense, right? Okay. All right, let's get to the next one. All right. People always make the best choice they have available. This is another controversial one. Because when you see someone make a bad choice, quote, bad choice, you think, how come they made that bad choice? That was a stupid thing to do. You shouldn't have made that bad choice. And I think I have an example here. What did I say? Oh, yeah. So my girlfriend, way before we met, she met a guy that she eventually married that turned out to be an emotionally abusive person. So she went through a lot of years of emotional abuse. But at the time, she thought that was the best choice she could make. And we bring these beliefs into our lives thinking that the choice that we're making is right for us. And so if we see people and we don't judge them for the choices they make, and we understand that they're making the best choice that they know how, we get to see them differently. Because we might make a different choice than they do. We might have a family member that picks bad people for relationships all the time. And we think, why? Well, then why do you keep picking people that drink? Or why do you keep picking people that take drugs? Or why do you keep picking people that are dangerous in some way when everyone else sees it and you don't? Because to the best of their ability, they're making the best choice that they know how, which means they might have limits inside of their beliefs that don't think maybe that they're not worthy of more. If you don't believe you're not worthy of more, you're not going to pick people that are worth more in a way. And that's hard, because if you're stuck in that cycle, you don't know you're making the wrong decisions. You think you're making a better, oh, this guy's nicer, or this girl's nicer. Great. And I'm talking about relationships, but this could be anything and anything you do. But, okay, I'm going to choose this person. At least they're not beating me. But this person does something else. And it's like on and on and on. And you see these people making the same decisions over and over again, but they're making the best decisions. So how do you get beyond that? That's, another story for another day. But we help them if they want help, or they decide that I'm the common denominator for all my decisions, and now I have to change how I think and heal from some stuff so I can make better decisions. But we're always in the best place in the moment. Every decision you make today is the best one that you can think of to make. Otherwise, you wouldn't make it. Now, you might have a decision between like a choice, Like, should I do this? Should I do that? But your experience is going to go, well, probably the best decision is to do that. And it could be wrong. But that's why I'm always a proponent of making decisions, even if they turn out to be wrong, so that you're not stuck in indecision. So you're not stuck in stagnation. Stagnation is suffering, in my opinion. Sometimes stagnation can be suffering. So make the decision, because you're going to make the best one you can possibly make anyway. It's going to be the best that you can come up with until you do some more healing. Even now, the decisions I make are the best that I can do. But 5 years from now, I can go, well, that decision was wrong. I needed to do some more healing. I did, and now I make different decisions. It's all part of that. Good so far? Great. Okay. We are at 11:30. Perfect. This is another controversial one. Almost every behavior is useful in some context. And it's right along the same, well, sort of along the same lines as the last one. For example, most people believe that pushing a child is wrong. Right? Most people believe that pushing a child is wrong. Push them in the playground or whatever. Most people also believe that pushing a child out of the way of a moving car is right. So there's some behavior, I mean, almost all behavior has a benefit in some context. Now, what this helps you do is when you see someone's behavior and it's not acceptable to you, or you don't like it, or it's not in your values, you can ask yourself, how is it acceptable to them? What is the context of that behavior? Another good example of that is when someone is always complaining, chronic complainer. Just today's episode I put out, chronic complainer. I'm complaining about this and I'm complaining about that, and my job sucks, and my work, my home sucks, and all this stuff. But what they get from it, something called secondary gain, is by complaining, somebody pays attention to them. Someone's like, oh, you poor thing. Oh, I feel better when you say that. I'm going to complain some more. And this and this and this. Oh, you poor thing. Oh, I get something from that. So in that context, that behavior is useful. Now, what's handy to know about that is that when you see behavior you don't like in someone else, I mean, unless it's really bad and you have to stop it, that's fine. But if you see behavior in someone else that you say, why is that person doing that? That's ridiculous. That's a bad behavior. It's wrong behavior. It's only going to lead to this, this, and this. To them, it's useful. And so you think of the context they're using it in, and quite possibly why they might be doing it. And that's handy to know. Why, if I was that person, why would I do that behavior? And the first thing you might come up with is, I wouldn't do that behavior. But you have to be flexible. Let's just say I did that behavior. I'm going to do that behavior in my head right now. And I'm going to complain and complain and complain. Well, I might drive that person away, but this person might try to help me. This person might try to give me money. Wow, there might be some use to this behavior. So now you start figuring out, why is this behavior useful? Or how is this behavior useful? And you have that assumption, you have that philosophy, and then suddenly you understand someone better. So all of these are to help you understand someone better, to help you come across maybe with some more compassion, some more understanding, keeping the trust, keeping the connection, not building a wall, not building resistance in your communication style. Everything I've talked about so far is all about that. So this means even dysfunctional behavior, which I just kind of talked about, even dysfunctional behavior for someone has a purpose. So if you think about your family, your friends, and they're showing some sort of dysfunctional behavior. Like I look at my mom. She's dysfunctional for keeping that abusive person in her life. You know, you could think that. But she goes, what is she gaining from it? Why would she do that behavior? Why would she accept this person in her life? Okay, I'll put myself in her shoes. And the first thing I think is I'm incredibly afraid. I'm afraid. I'm afraid to leave. What does leaving mean? What does leaving this bad relationship mean? It means I might not have any money. I'm afraid of, I might have a lack, not mentality, but a belief system. Like if I don't have someone to help me, support me, to help me pay the bills, then I won't be able to pay the bills, and therefore I'll go hungry and I'll die. Without thinking about all the other family that might support her, she puts herself in this belief system cycle. And this can happen over and over again. So you see dysfunctional behavior and you go, okay, so there's a reason someone's doing that dysfunctional behavior and it somehow benefits them. So it's just important to know. It helps us not judge someone else. It doesn't mean it won't happen. We tend to have these judgments come out in us, but it does help us understand them more and help us communicate with them more effectively. Good. Okay, so this is an interesting one. Anyone can do anything. And if a person can do something, that behavior can be modeled. It's kind of a strange one. And in the sense of communication, when you realize that anyone can do anything, all they need is the appropriate steps. It's kind of like making an amazing dinner. Like, I never believed I could make an amazing dinner, cook it up, and have different frying pans going on at the same time, until I moved in with my girlfriend, and she got home late a lot, and I decided that I needed to start cooking some more. And me cooking is like fry an egg. Flip it, fry it some more, break the yolk, salt and pepper, done. Or, in the past, frozen pizza in the oven. But since I've been here, I learned how to do things that I couldn't necessarily do. Now, there's going to be limitations. We may not be able to beat the fastest runner in the world. We may not be able to beat the best person at something. But having the belief that anyone can do anything if they are able to model the person that does it or get the instructions or the directions to do so gives us some faith in the people in our life. It helps us see someone in a way where they go, okay, they're not able to do it, but with the right instruction they can. And this could apply to children. If you think my child has a learning disability and I won't be able to get past a certain point, I believe that you can just keep going with someone and have someone as a model. This is why role modeling is really great. When you find someone that does behavior that you want to emulate, and then you act more like them, and then you go, okay, what would, like my mentor when I was younger, what would Robert do? If I was in that situation, what would Robert do? And so this helps your own behavior, and it's not so necessarily connected to one-on-one or one-to-many communication with other people, but it does help your own behavior, and it does help you see other people in a different light. And so believing that anyone can do anything, even though it's not 100% true, but just having that belief, it is a more optimistic viewpoint about people. It gives people a break. They just don't have the right model. They don't have the right mentor. And sometimes they need to be introduced to that model or mentor to increase that ability in themselves. So that's one of the minor things. That makes sense, right? Good. All right. See, that's my communications style. I like to keep making sure everyone is on track. All right, we're gonna do one more. This is the last one. It's not like the biggest one, but it's a good one. People already have all the resources they need inside of them. You may have heard this either on my show or somewhere else, that people always have everything they need inside of them already. The problem is, and this is where I got stuck before, is that I don't think I do. Or I know I don't. I know I don't have that resource in me. Otherwise, I would just access it. That's the problem, is that most people can't access the resource. In my book, Clear the Path to Happiness, the biggest step is removing the obstacles to happiness. Because happiness is already inside. Because we're born pretty much peaceful until we get hungry, until the light's too bright, until we miss our mommy or daddy or whatever. We're born pretty much peaceful, and then we learn how to feel differently along the way. We learn how to feel negative, and we learn that crying takes care of our needs, and we learn all this stuff. But if we believe now that we have the resource of peace inside of us, and all we need to do is a certain thing to access it, then we know it's there. I mean, a lot of us go through, or some of us go through life without the belief that we have happiness, peace, the ability to find love, the ability to be loved, worthiness, but we all have it. We're all born with it. It gets obstacles are put in the way throughout life. So knowing that it's in there is step one. Step two is, how do I access it? Now, one of the ways I help people access any state that they want to have at the time is to remember a time when they felt that way. And sometimes that might be going, okay, remember a time when you were the happiest. It's like, okay, remember a time when I was the happiest. I can't think of anything right now. But that might happen. I can't think of anything right now because you're put on the spot. But later on, something might happen. You go, okay, I remember when I was happiest. Great. And when you feel it, I mean, this is what happened. This is what they did in my my first NLP class. Because I remember I was not feeling very well. I was like sort of getting out of depression at that time. And the teacher's like, what are you here for? And I was like, I just want to learn how to be happy. And she goes, that's easy. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not easy. I've been trying to do it for the last 2 years. And she goes, just remember a time when you were happy. And I'm like, okay. And no, she goes, really remember it. I'm like, okay. And then she goes, now put yourself in there, like you can see through your own eyes and feel what you felt and hear what you heard while you were in that state. And I'm starting to get immersed in it. I was like, okay. And all the feelings that you had, and see the colors are very, really bright, and brighten up the image. And she started not changing it, but really amplifying that memory. And she goes, how does that feel? And I was like, that feels pretty good. And she's like, are you happy? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, well, there you go. And I'm like, wait, it's not that easy. Because I know I'm going to settle back into my state after I think about this. But the whole idea is that, oh, wait, so it's inside of me. Yes, it's there. Yes, it doesn't disappear. What you love to feel is in there. And sometimes we have all these problems and all these stresses and things that are going on in our life that block that. I don't feel peace. I just want to feel peace. Well, a question to ask yourself, if I didn't have this job, would I feel peace? Oh, well, that's a different feeling. If this person never showed up in my life, would I have peace? Wow, that's a different feeling. If it was 90 degrees out, would I feel peace? If it was 40 degrees out, I mean, you just start asking yourself questions. And it puts you in that state. It also helps you explore what might be causing the blocks to how you feel inside. So that's a handy little thing, like asking yourself questions, if this was missing in my life, or if this didn't exist in my life, how would that feel? I mean, when I try those questions on myself, if I didn't have to pay any bills, how would that feel? Wow, that feels pretty good. Okay, so that tells me what might be an obstacle to peace and happiness. And if that's an obstacle, maybe I need to focus more on that. Like if I had more money, I don't know if that's the answer, but if I had more money, would that raise my level of peace? Would it diminish the obstacles? I believe that a lot of the stuff that we want to feel inside, it's not that we should try to attain those feelings. It's just that we need to diminish the obstacles to those feelings because they're already in there. You already have this inside of you. So how can I diminish this? This is why it's great to get rid of toxic people in your life. If I have this toxic person, every time I think of happiness, this toxic person appears in my mind or appears in the room. I'm thinking of a peaceful place, but this toxic person now is in my mind. Okay, so now I know that when I think of my happy place, my peaceful place, that toxicity is dripping in, feeding into it, and that is definitely a source of block. That is an obstacle. So does that mean I have to get rid of them? Does that mean I have to do some more healing in myself? You know, this is why personal growth, this is how we evolve beyond where we are to diminish these obstacles so that we can access the resources that are already in us. And if you don't believe you have these resources, it's possible. I'm going to suggest you know, you find something that helps you, of course, but I'm going to suggest thinking beyond your own thoughts. And that might mean, and this is sort of an AA concept, and this is a spiritual concept and a religious concept, that might mean believing that there's got to be a higher power out there. There's got to be something beyond me. There has to be. Because if you cannot connect with this inside of you, then sometimes you have to look beyond. Oh, she's clapping. Mandy's clapping. So you look beyond and you go, and I've done this. And I'm going to admit it right now. I'm like, things have gotten so bad that I just put my hands together and go, God, if this is a higher purpose for me, then show me the path out of it. Show me the path to fixing this. And, you know, I don't know what's out there. I don't know if it's just our super conscious and we're all connected to each other, or if it really is a super being or whatever. I have to use faith. I have to go outside of me. So that's like as spiritual and religious that I get, or at least on the air. I have my own personal practices, but I do believe that when you cannot connect with something inside of you, and it's always at a loss, you put the faith out there, knowing that there's got to be purpose behind this. There's got to be purpose for some of the suffering I'm going through. What's my purpose? And I tell you what, when you start asking these questions outside of you, you get answers, and you get a path that opens up that sometimes you don't feel you're ready for. But I'm telling you right now, when you get a challenge, you are ready for it. You're just sometimes afraid to use the tools. You've probably heard me say on the show, I wasn't ready to face my stepfather trying to come into my mom's house. I didn't feel I was ready, but I knew I had the tools. And it's just a matter of using those tools. I knew that I could honor my boundaries there, but I was so damn afraid to honor my boundaries every other time with him. But the challenge was presented to me. So I want you to use this as a takeaway, is that when a challenge is presented to you, it would not have been presented if you didn't have the tools to get through it. And some of us have challenges that last years. I'm looking at one of you. I won't point out the name. And some of us have challenges that we get out of and we have to heal from, and so on and so forth. So you are capable of doing this and healing through it and evolving from it, and you always get something better on the other side. When my car broke down in the desert and I reached the full panic, the height of panic, and I realized that the worst case scenario is unfolding as we speak, I had a wash of peace like I've never felt. The worst case scenario happened, and there was nothing else I could do. And I completely let go. And whoosh, full peace. I let everything go. I let my car, all my possessions, all of it. And then I found I had enough money because I sold my car and all my possessions for $200, and I had a bus ticket home. And that was it. I went home 1,000 miles, and at the time my girlfriend's like, what happened? I was like, I'm not sure, but I feel pretty damn good. She goes, you don't have a car? You don't have half the stuff, or you don't have any of the stuff that was in your car? Because I was packing a lot of stuff back then. And I was like, yeah, but I feel good. I minimized. And then I started minimizing my life. It was like, I'm so attached to this stuff, but now I'm not. The challenge came. It was like one of the worst things that I felt in my life, and it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened. And if we see it if we see those challenges for something even greater, then we just have a better life. So that's my presentation today. I hope you got something from it. Feel free to unmute, and you can say anything you'd like, but thank you for joining me. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Linda. Any questions?
Oh, no, I thought that was wonderful, especially the last couple of comments. The asking questions of yourself or your higher power.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mandy. And thank you, Pura. Can't hear you. She's trying to unmute, I think.
Sorry.
Or trying to shut me off. Turn this thing off.
Can I ask you a question, or
yes.
You want to end?
Please do.
It was very good.
Thank you.
I mean, I have a sister that also managing one of my businesses. She recently divorced, and it's impossible to talk to her. So I don't know if it's because so this communication open up some big questions to me. So based on what you just said, it's not her, it's up to me to make myself.
Sorry.
And it's really difficult. It's a real challenge. I mean, she's screaming all the time. She's just very frustrated. And I mean,
Yes.
all she said to me is impossible to be with, and I exaggerate everything. And I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
and someone is through a lot of pressure because she divorced and she has 2 kids and she had a very abusive relationship for 10 years. She doesn't know it's abusive. I mean, she thinks, but anyway, it's a mess right now. I mean, it's in a difficult situation.
Yes. So is your question how to communicate with her?
Exactly. How can I be more patient, or how can I communicate with her without offending her all the time? Because all my conversations and hanging up, she hung up on me. And I still, she's running one business that is mine. So we have to talk. I mean, the logical thing will be not to talk for a while. I think based on what you said, just give her time and space. But I cannot do that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
what is
Yep.
your advice in these extreme situations?
Yep. So first thing, I'm not saying that she is, but first thing, listen to the episode I just created called Chronic Complainers. And if you haven't listened to that yet, that'll help. Secondly, when you talk to her, realize that she is exactly where she needs to be, even though you don't agree with it. Realize that where she is, I mean, the beliefs that she has and the decisions that she's making are exactly what she needs to do. They benefit her in some way, because really where you have to come from is a place of compassion for where people are. If I were to put in a nutshell a lot of this communication stuff, compassion for where someone is huge. That way you can go, oh, that must be so awful for you. You're relating. Oh my God, tell me more. And you want her to vent, because all this stuff she's coming out with you because she probably feels, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if she's a chronic complainer and does this to everyone, but she might feel safe with you venting to you. So when someone feels safe venting to you, probably it would be unhelpful to be judgmental about what they're going through. If I tell you, oh, I can't stand my girlfriend, every time she does this, I get so mad. And you go, well, why don't you just tell her? Or why don't you do this? Why don't you just do that? If you start telling me what to do, I'm going to feel a little unsafe. It's kind of like the episode on child sexual abuse I just had. If a child comes up to you and says, Uncle so-and-so touched me there, and the parent goes, what? I'm going to go punch that guy in the face. I'm going to call the police. The child's going to back off and go, whoa, what I just did caused all this trouble. And don't punch Uncle so-and-so. Don't do that. Don't do that. I will never speak about it again. And that's so dangerous. And that, that's with children, but it's the same idea with adults. You don't want to sit there listening to someone complain and vent all the time, and it gets nowhere. And then the next week they do the same thing over and over again. I get it. There are some people that you might have to take a break from. But if you are willing to participate in active listening and giving them that safe zone to just say, and this is what I say on the show, just let them say all they want to say, and then pull more out of them. Like, really? How does that make you feel? Oh, just keep saying, or complaining, venting. And then you go, okay, what specifically does that do to you? Or how does that make you feel again? Or, you start asking questions that really show your interest, that you're curious, and you're coming from a place like they're finally being heard. Because a lot of complainers feel like they're not being heard, so they'll complain. I'm not being heard, I'm not being understood, complain some more. So that's another way to do it.
It's more like that complaining is just aggressive. It's more like venting type of thing. She doesn't complain. She directly insults me.
Oh, she insults you?
Yeah. You are impossible. No one can listen to you because you are very aggressive.
This is all about you? She's insulting you?
Yeah.
It's not about her own life?
No, it's about me. Because
Well, you know where I go with that?
It's true that I say sometimes, I'm sorry because everything that happened to you, you may have hard time these days. No, I'm perfectly fine. You are just crazy to think that there's something wrong with me because
Oh,
it's just defensive
you know
and
what? You know what?
attacking me.
You know what I do with that? You know what I do with those kind of people?
Yeah,
That's a different scenario.
yeah.
I just, I really don't, I have to turn off taking it personally because they have an agenda to put me down, to make me wrong, or to make them feel right. Or I just go, you know what? You might be right. I might have something to work on. That's it. You might be right. Oh, you're so aggressive. You know what? You might be right. I might have something to work on. Because what it does is it vents the energy out. Because we're used to coming back with another attack or a defensive. I'm like, no, I don't do that. No, that's not true at all. That's not true at all. I don't mean to be angry with you. You can say, you know what? You might be right. How does that change the energy? I don't know if you try that now, but if it'll change her attacking you, and she might even go further. She might have more to say, like, you're damn right I'm right, and you do this and you do this, and you go, wow, I have a lot to work on. You might be right. I'm so sorry I've been doing that to you. Because we got to remember, if we're responsible for the message, the meaning of our communication is being conveyed, that's how she's taking it. She might be 100% wrong, but that's how she took it. That's how she interpreted it. The map is not the territory. What you're thinking in your head has good intentions, probably comes from a place of love and compassion, but the way she accepts it is, wow, that's mean, aggressive, assertive, and you're telling me what to do, and you're talking down to me like a child. Wow, it's like you can't communicate like that. So you step back and you take responsibility, and you can say, you know what, you might be right, and I do have these things to work on. And it takes the energy out, and it doesn't. It's sort of a lie. It's sort of a deception. I mean, I hate to tell you to lie or deceive, but when somebody is just out of control, I look at a greater good. Like, how can I just bring this to a peaceful place? I'm going to accept the responsibility that I was not able to communicate to you effectively. So you know what? You're probably right. You might be right. I love that. You might be right. So that squashes the energy. It releases her, and she finally got her point across. Now she feels understood. Now she feels that. So, you know, that may or may not work. I think it will to a certain way. Like I said, these aren't the exact words that you have to use. It's more of a philosophy. Like if she really did take me that way, then I really need to accept this in myself, and I need to own it. I know I'm right, but I need to own that I might not be, and that she, in the sense that she has misinterpreted. I hope that helps, Pura. Anything else, girls? I think Linda's ready to go to sleep. She's on the other side of the world in Australia, and you are in Madrid, I think, Pura, and she's in Mexico. Oh, this is like a worldwide summit. We got Mexico. Yeah, we got Mexico. We got Spain, right, Pura? And we got Australia and USA. Wish us luck with the president.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right, girls, I'm gonna hang up now. I got some stuff to do. It was so good to connect with all of you. I really enjoyed this, and I hope you did too. Hope you got something from it.
Thank you, Paul. And
Thank you.
good day, everyone.
Good day, good night. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Maddie.
Thank you so much.